Welcome to an Uncredible show. Your source for unreliable, unqualified, and by definition unabashed. I fucked that up. Let's just get into it. So yesterday I talked about the story from The Guardian that showed the NSA was spying on 120 million Verizon users, right? And talked about the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein, and Director of National Intelligence, James the Clapper, and how they shamelessly, in the case of Clapper, lied outright about the spying, and in the case of Feinstein, denied that Clapper was lying by saying that he was an honest man. Hilarious. Okay. So then I talked about Prism, which came from The Guardian. That was a story that came from The Guardian as well. I've since gleaned some more information on the program, and I just want to talk about that a little bit. But today's show is going to be more about the guy who leaked the documents to The Guardian and the corporate establishment media's response to him. That they don't perhaps care for this guy who leaked that stuff probably won't surprise you, if you're a person who's alive on this planet. But the extent to which they go is probably bordering on extreme, even in this sort of status quo context, right? So, some details about Prism. So, Glenn Greenwald talked about Prism, and he kept referring, when he talked about it, he kept referring to this direct access, right? And in the carefully worded press releases from the companies who were purported to have cooperated in the spying, those companies referred to direct access as well, specifically saying that they did not provide direct access to the government. Now, I mentioned yesterday that I thought it smelled like bullshit, and it turns out there is some on our shoe, to use a strained metaphor. I should have deleted that. That's terrible. The New York Times did confirm that Google and Facebook did cooperate with the government in providing them information. That doesn't appear to be in dispute. But there's this question of direct access. So they give our information to the NSA, right? Our emails, chats, pictures, Skyping, etc. And that is content, right? As opposed to what was in the other spying program, the Verizon spying, which was just the metadata, right? And these companies, when they release their press releases, Google, Facebook, Yahoo, etc., said specifically, we don't give our info to the NSA. We don't give your info to the NSA from our servers directly. Well, we know they're giving it to them, so how do they do it if it's not directly? The New York Times reported that the company has discussed constructing these secure online rooms where NSA can access the information. So when they say rooms, they're talking about, I guess, like some kind of, I don't know the technical jargon, but it's not that from the servers directly. It's this like other electronic location. It's not direct, right? It's not directly. Technically, it's indirect because it's the exact same information, and it's like perhaps even more easily accessible to the government, but it's technically not directly from the server. So, did we say we were going to protect our private information? That's exactly what we're doing. We put it in a secure room for the NSA to look at it anytime they want. It's not direct access to the server. That's awesome. Okay, so apparently that doesn't seem to bother too many people, right? I don't understand why not. But before we talk about that, let me explain. Yeah, I actually am going to talk about that just a little bit. I hadn't planned to, but I can't resist. So it doesn't seem to bother too many people. Anecdotally, when you read the comments on tweets or stories like this, I'd say upwards of 70-80% of the comments are agreeing with the government propaganda that he's a traitor. That Edward Snowden is a traitor. Did I even get to that? I don't think I got to the guy's name. His name's Edward Snowden. If I didn't say it, we'll get to it in a minute. He's the guy who leaked Prism in the Verizon story. So that's anecdotally, but there was also a poll that came out that roughly said, is it okay or is it not okay for the government to spy on us, to for national security. And, I can't remember exactly how it went, but there were sort of different circumstances. Like, they asked the question a couple different ways, but it was generally right down the middle and actually a little bit more in favor of people giving up, privacy for national security. And it's really fucking irritating. And so we'll get into that too. Okay, so you should check out the video that Edward Snowden did, explaining why he did what he did. All you got to do is, search his name, Edward Snowden, on Google, and that's what's going to come up. As long as you don't mind the search you just did going into the secure room where it's copied and then cataloged by the NSA. But it's probably worth it. And there's not much you can do to stop it. You might as well check it out and just hedge your bets. So first, let's talk about the media's response to Snowden. Actually, and I think what I'm going to do is talk about the media, what the media says about him, and then sort of look at some quotes from the video. If this show ends up becoming something I can spend a lot more time on, in terms of preparation and increasing the production value, I would like to be able to implement videos and graphics and stuff like that. And it's better to hear this stuff coming from Edward Snowden's own mouth, but you're just gonna have to deal with my nasally voice for the rest of this. But I mean, you're a bunch of ghosts anyway. You're not real people, so who gives a fuck? Well, not you, because ghosts actually don't exist either. I'm not talking to anybody right now, so it's not a problem. But I can hear my own voice in my headphones, so maybe that's why I'm doing this in the first place. Maybe I have to just admit it to myself. So he leaked Prism, right? Now, if you've been following along at all, you can guess what the establishment is going to say. It's going to be the same stuff they say about all the whistleblowers, right? Thomas Drake, who leaked info about massive waste at the NSA. Bradley Manning, who I've talked about a lot on this show, who released info about the government torture and other illegalities. So here comes the establishment cavalry after Edward Snowden, just the next guy in this tradition. CNN senior legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin says, that sounds like a fun name, Toobin, says Snowden is bizarre. I mean, and here I'm quoting, here's someone who's supposedly concerned about free speech and transparency and goes to a place that's under control of one of the most oppressive in the world. I don't know if he fucked up when he was speaking. That doesn't make much sense. He's talking about Hong Kong. Edward Snowden decided to go to Hong Kong, and that's where he shot this video. And he goes on to say, so I don't think we're looking at a coherent ideology here, where he's upset. He doesn't like government policy, but we don't usually let a 29-year-old high school dropout to decide what our policy is. I love this guy. And that's exactly how he said it, too. I'm pretty much perfectly imitating the tone in his voice and the inflection in what he was saying. Now, you know how I feel about CNN, right? Actually, maybe you don't. I don't think I've talked about CNN as much in the 2 weeks I've been doing an Uncredible show. So instead of explaining it outright, let me just take a look here at what Edward Snowden said in the interview. And by the way, he did this interview with Glenn Greenwald of formerly of Salon, but of The Guardian, the publication that came out with the story, if I didn't mention that. Greenwald asked him what positions he held with the intelligence community in the past. He said, I've been a systems engineer, systems administrator, senior advisor for the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, solutions consultant, and a telecommunications information system officer. That fucking high school dropout. That's textbook high school dropout if I've ever heard one. Did you know Snowden made $200,000 a year working for that private firm in Hawaii? Did I mention what they were called? I don't think I think I skipped over it. He worked for a private firm that, I guess, like, in some way, sort of analyzed the information for the NSA. Yeah, $200,000 a year. That's what most high school dropouts make, right? I'm pretty sure that Bill, if I'm not mistaken, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, these types of dudes didn't go. I think it's they didn't go to college. But anyway, how condescending is that tone, and how much is he ignoring the substance of what's going on? This Jeffrey Toobin guy. It's pretty funny. He actually seems kind of jealous to me, the way they talk. Oh, high school dropout. Yeah, it's because he's done more for our country than you can ever hope to, dude. All right, so what relevance does this high school education have in this context? I would venture nothing. In fact, he seems to be have been an incredibly successful analyst. I mean, I guess you could say he was going from job to job, every 2 years or something if he held all those jobs. But if you look at any CEO of any company, you're going to find something quite similar. And to the point Toobin was trying to make about who decides our policy, check this out. I'm just going to paraphrase here. He says basically that the more time you spend dealing with classified information, the more you start to, this is Snowden, the more you start to, one, see abuses, and two, you start to see how the abuses the NSA is doing become sort of normalized within the community, right? Like, the people making those fat salaries get pretty used to doing that shit and not asking questions. I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, there's probably hundreds of thousands of people working for the NSA, and, nobody's come out till now with this kind of leak. I mean, either they're super scared or they're super incentivized not to leak, right? Probably a combination of both. But, I mean, we don't even have to speculate about that. We know he made $200,000 a year for doing an office job, essentially, is how he describes it. He lived in Hawaii, in paradise, had a girlfriend. He had things pretty good. And then to the point about policymaking, right? That annoying point at the end that Toobin makes, we shouldn't have 29-year-olds making policy. Quote, and this actually goes to both those points. This is from Snowden. Over time, that awareness of wrongdoing sort of builds up, and you feel compelled to talk about it. And the more you talk about it, the more you're ignored. The more you're told it's not a problem until eventually you realize that these things need to be determined by the public and not by somebody who was simply hired by the government. He's talking about a conversation with that the American people need to have. Isn't that the whole point of a democracy? Or I mean, I guess it was a long time ago that I was in grade school and we learned about what democracy was, but I think that was the point, right? It's the people, right? I know there was something about people. There was something about maybe a government representing the people at the will of the people. But I don't remember, but I think it was something like that. Or, maybe Toobin and apologists like him thinking democracy is supposed to be you just go along with what the government does in secret at the expense of our civil liberties. Which, that seems to be pretty different from what I learned in high school and what Snowden seems to remember, from what he learned. And, well, he didn't graduate high school, so maybe that's why he's getting this all wrong. That seems to be the opposite of a democracy, the thing that Toobin's advocating for. Quickly, Boehner, whatever, the orange guy, John Boehner, majority leader in the House. He saying vaguely that the revelation of this information puts the American people at risk, right? So that's what he said. How is that exactly, Mr. Boehner? He says because it shows our enemies what our capabilities are. Again, where's the fucking money, Lebowski? What evidence do you have that any of this has protected us? I mean, what we do know about it is that it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment, But beyond that, I think that you're on shaky ground when you try to say that, security is something that justifies violating our civil liberties. I think that in and of itself is incorrect. But I mean, they don't have any evidence that it protects us anyway. They just, claim that it does, and they never provide any evidence of that. Okay, so that was a short thing on Boehner. So he's been accused of trying to make policy. He's been accused of, being a traitor, and Tubin also hinted at something that Representative Peter King on, what I consider to be the infamous Committee of Homeland Security said on Monday. He said, this guy Peter King, quote, he knows our intelligence, who our intelligence assets are, who our intelligence agents are around the world, and the fact that he has allowed our enemy to know what our sources and methods are is extremely dangerous. Oh, that would be dangerous if that's what he actually did. I think he should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I consider him right now to be a defector. So he's been called bizarre. He's been called a would-be policymaker, a high school dropout, now a defector. Huh, that's interesting. I love Peter King more and more with everything he says. So let's take a look at another quote from Snowden, relevant to this douchebag. He says, quote, I carefully evaluated every single document I disclosed to ensure that each was legitimately in the public interest. There are all sorts of documents that would have made a big impact that I didn't turn over because harming people wasn't my goal. Transparency is. Which, if you're paying attention, despite how many times the Obama administration says that I think they actually claim they're the most transparent in history. Is that right? Laugh with me. 2 points here. It highlights one lie that King told where he simply claimed that sources and methods were revealed when we know from looking at the documents that they're not. But that's specifically not what's revealed, right? He went to pains not to reveal that stuff. You just made it up. And, I guess he's just banking on the fact that the media is just going to repeat what he says, not challenge him on it. And I actually didn't get in too much to what the media, how they were complicit in sort of just letting these, people from the security committees, say this, tell these lies, spread these lies. I talked about that a little bit yesterday. Okay, and the second point is, do you know how valuable that stuff would have been to a foreign power, right, if he actually did reveal that stuff? If he had 10% of the access to the information at the NSA that he claims he had, and he claims that he had quite a bit, I think he even said that if he wanted to, he could access Obama's correspondence, which is that would be shocking if it were true. But they would have paid dearly for it. In fact, let's see what he specifically talks about that a little bit. Let's see what he says. Anyone in the positions of access with the technical capabilities that I had could suck out secrets, pass them on in the open market to Russia. They always have an open door, as we do. I had access to full rosters of everyone working at the NSA, the entire intelligence community, and other undercover assets all over the world. The locations of every station, we have what their missions are, and so forth. And, on the subject of defection, right, I said he went to Hong Kong. He says Hong Kong has a strong tradition of free speech. People think, China, great firewall, right? Mainland China does have significant restrictions on free speech, but the people of Hong Kong have a long tradition of protesting in the streets, of making their views known. The internet is not filtered here more so than any other Western government and I believe Hong Kong government is actually independent in relation to a lot of leading Western governments. Wow, what a traitor. He doesn't want to get thrown in Gitmo for 13 years and tortured. He's a traitor and a coward. Obviously, a traitor. Try not to go to Gitmo. And then there's this moron, right? A Fox News analyst named Ralph Peters. Oh, man, I can't wait for this. Fox News, it's going to be good. He says, now you've got this 29-year-old high school dropout whistleblower. Actually, to his credit, he actually did call him a whistleblower there. Instead of a traitor or any of these other terms he could have used. Whistleblower, actually, I don't know if you know this guy. What's his name? Ralph Peters. But whistleblower actually has, for the moment, has a positive connotation. Whistleblower making foreign policy for our country, our security policy. It's sad, Brian. Talking to that dude, Brian Kilmeade. We've made treason cool. Betraying your country is a kind of fashion statement. He wants to be the national security Kim Kardashian. Ralph Peters, he probably knows a lot about Kim Kardashian. It's just the feeling that I'm getting from him. Although, I think he's mistaken about Edward Snowden. Although I mean, there was a lot of positive reaction to Edward Snowden from the young ladies. So sex tape, that would be a good way. He could monetize this whole thing that way. Although ladies don't really like pornography in that way, right? He cites Bradley Manning as a hero. I mean, we need to get very, very serious about treason. And, oh, by the way, for treason, as in the case of Bradley Manning or Edward Snowden, you bring back the death penalty. By the way, he also called for the assassination of Julian Assange a few years ago, too. Wow, what a brilliant analysis. Remember, he's a Fox News analyst. Oh, man. You know Fox News has a thing called the brain room at Fox, right? I sort of picture, like, that giant brain from the last level in Contra, and it, like, feeds off the brains of the minions who are, the news actors in front of the cameras there at Fox. That's unfair. Those people are all smart people. What I'm saying is that that diatribe there from Ralph Peters didn't exactly sound like analysis to me. But, I think it's probably a euphemism. I don't think he actually does much analyzing, in fairness. But, that's the way these things work. So let's listen to Snowden again and see if this sounds like a guy who really thought this was going to lead to this fame and fortune and glory. He says, quote, and this one's long, sort of a long quote. Stick with me here. The greatest fear I have regarding the outcome for America of these disclosures is that nothing will change. People will see in the media all of the disclosures. They'll know the lengths that the government is going to grant themselves powers unilaterally to create greater control over American society and global society, but they won't be willing to take the risks necessary to stand up and fight to change things, to force their representatives to actually take a stand in their interests. Well, that's definitely true. And, we can talk about the reasons why. It's the money. And then he goes on to say, in the months ahead, the years ahead, it's only going to get worse until eventually there will be a time where policies will change because the only thing that restricts the activities of surveillance state are policy. Even our agreements with other sovereign governments, we consider that to be a stipulation of policy rather than a stipulation of law. And because of that, a new leader will be elected, and they'll find the switch. And they'll say, because of this crisis, because of the dangers we face in this world, some new and unpredicted threat, we need more authority, we need more power. And there will be nothing the people can do at that point to oppose it, and it will be turnkey tyranny. I agree with him. I mentioned 3 people in the media who called him a dropout, a defector, a fame seeker, a traitor. And, that last, sort of speech isn't the right term. It was a response to what Glenn Greenwald asked him. But, I hate to say it, but I'm afraid that the wisest thing that Snowden might have done in all of this was not to get his hopes up too high, right? So, sort of, I guess, paradoxically, he doesn't expect, as I say, perhaps wisely, that, nothing's going to change. But, and this is why it's so courageous, is that he went and he did it anyway. There are other quotes. I mean, he talks about, it's not some, you can go on living in comfort, living a comfortable life, even though it's not necessarily a private or free life. But it's not the kind of world that he wants to live in. And he actually cites, a selfish motivation for doing it. And, he does it all despite that he has serious doubts about whether, he says his greatest fear is that after the disclosures, nothing will happen. And, I share that fear. There are many other examples in the establishment media and the government of people demonizing him, and I worry about the story, losing traction after, in the face of the 24-hour news cycle, the public's apathy, all of these people just like defending the government and willing to just throw away their rights. And the mountain of propaganda in them, which, probably causes them to think that that's something they need to do, and the media complicity making it all possible. I think it's time for a philosophy break. So, what's the macro argument here that it's sort of laced throughout all this, right? There are a lot of themes in what's really what this like balance of security and freedom is, right? But if I'm going to force myself to break it down, it really just seems like another case of the song remains the same, right? The establishment media claims that he's a traitor, that he endangered America, but what is it that these people are actually advocating, right? The people who say that he endangered America and that this is the stuff we actually need to keep doing. The information that Snowden leaked was simply that the government was spying on its own citizens, right? There aren't any details on what the NSA found or how the methods they used or any of the people who worked at the NSA or where they're stationed throughout the world, or how many people work there. I mean, there were virtually no details at all, except for, how they were spying on us. He said how careful he was, and we know he's telling the truth because that stuff isn't in the leaks, right? That detailed information on methods, people, and whatnot. All the electronic data is being tracked and stored without any probable cause or any even passing suspicion, which is a clear violation of the First Amendment. Now, I mean, what's the substance of the argument that he betrayed us by telling us what the government is doing, right? They're saying he betrayed us. These people are saying, oh, well, it's okay if they violate the Fourth Amendment. Or, they have this, like, cognitive dissonance where they somehow think that it's okay to violate the Fourth Amendment or that they didn't violate the Fourth Amendment because of the security, excuse. The only thing I can think of is that somehow, because terrorists know they're watching everyone, that they might be more careful about, like communicating electronically or something. I got news for you, ghosts. If terrorists are smart enough to pose a threat to us, they probably know how to take precautions with their fucking communications, right? And how cowardly is anyone to be so afraid of terrorists and potential attacks that it's less likely to affect you, which, by the way, are less likely to affect you than getting struck by lightning. That they're willing to give the government more and more power, no matter how untrustworthy the government is revealed to be with every passing day, hiding behind secret laws, having secret courts which give them carte blanche, approving these things 99.9% of the time, going after whistleblowers as traitors, issuing threats of violence, calling for execution of guys like Snowden, and of course Manning and Drake and Assange, and probably now Glenn Greenwald before too long. If you remember Christopher Hitchens, one time he characterized religion in a certain way, and I looked up a quote, and this is something he said a number of times, but in this particular quote, he says it like this: "We would be living," and this is on the subject of, what it would be like if God did exist, the Christian God, the way that he's normally characterized, right? We would be living under an unalterable celestial dictatorship that could read our thoughts while we were asleep and convict us of thought crime and pursue us after we're dead. And in the name of which priesthoods and other oligarchies and hierarchies would be set up to enforce God's law. Now, I always tended to like about half of who Hitchens was as a public figure and hated the other half. I mean, he was an unbearable sort of warmonger who apologized for aggressive war and racial profiling, etc. You know, it was always entertaining to watch him because the way that he spoke, the way he formed his arguments, I just think he was totally wrong about that. But I think he was right about the religion thing. That was the half that I liked. And what's the relevance of that here? Maybe it's obvious, maybe I don't have to explain, but I'm going to explain anyway. Well, people would always ask him, Chris, they would always call him Chris, he didn't like that. If you can't bring yourself to believe, can you at least admit that if it were true, it would be a good thing? And of course, they're assuming that, this being is going to be benevolent. And that quote was his way of saying that the attributes of a supposed God, as described generally by Western Christianity, are actually not good qualities, but are horrors, right? He was disgusted with the idea of constant surveillance, thought crime, the eye in the sky, and he used to ridicule people who welcomed the all-seeing eye of the deity as those who welcomed their chains, right? That was the way he put it. Glad of your chains. I think I remember him saying that perhaps the most disgusting thing about religion was the people's willingness to be, glad to be slaves. Now, I suppose that's a matter of taste, right? I mean, if you want the government watching everything you do and you believe it's better to sacrifice your privacy for some nebulous protection for which they never provide any evidence, well, I think you haven't been paying too much attention to the way these things work out. We know the terrible things they're doing in secret, right? I mean, aside from just the spying on us and them having no evidence that they're actually protecting us, if you look at this stuff that's, in the leaks, the Bradley Manning leaks, they were doing pretty terrible shit. Look it up. But there's another argument, which I think is a little bit different here, right? So the song that the apologists sing, which first came from Lindsey Graham, at least in this round of apologists, with this leak, is that if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about, right? If you shouldn't mind us spying on your phones because I said it right the first time. If you don't do anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. I slurred that together pretty badly. Never mind the fact that this sentiment is the sentiment that all of the totalitarian regimes, disseminate, right? This idea that if you're not doing anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. The knowledge that you're being watched in and of itself has really negative effects on who we are as people, right? Regardless, it doesn't matter if you're doing something wrong or not. And Glenn Greenwald uses an analogy to explain this, and I'm going to, borrow it from him and try and express it less articulately. When you train dogs, you can set up fences, or we just call them gates, right? But they're also for children to keep them from not falling down the stairs, those types of things. And the gates, sometimes they could be electrified, but they don't have to be. And you put them up while you're training the dogs in order to keep them from going to certain areas of the house or going outside the yard. And, eventually what you do is you take the fences away. I mean, they're a real pain in the ass. Like, you don't want to have to step over that thing every time you need to go down the stairs. But the funny thing about dogs is that after you've trained them not to, cross into that area, they voluntarily don't go in that area, even when the gate's not there anymore. They remember that they're not allowed to go there. So, and this is the point. I mean, if we know everything we're doing is being watched, the government doesn't need to tell us overtly that, what we shouldn't do. They don't need to, abolish the Bill of Rights, right? And if we know they're watching us, we voluntarily relinquish our rights because we know they're watching us, right? We're less willing to offer dissenting opinions. We're less willing to, have creative discussions where we, discuss controversial things, amongst each other. We don't do academic exploration because we know there's this eye on us all the time. And, We understand this intrinsically, and another example that Greenwald uses often is that we all have passwords on our emails. We have locks on our bathroom doors, and it's not because we're doing anything illegal, in our emails or in the bathroom. Well, probably not, unless you live in a. Well, never mind. Probably not. It's just that we recognize that privacy is crucial to certain aspects of our lives, right? And it's part of our humanity. I mean, it's something intrinsic to who we are, and you're giving that piece of your humanity away. And in my view, what you give up, in that privacy for so-called protection, especially with the government's record on what they've done in secret, I just think is a really, really bad deal. No deal. That's what I say. Think about it. Don't give up your humanity. It's not worth it. And I didn't even really get deep into the different evidence that there is that not just that they don't have evidence that they're protecting us, but that they're actually lying about the few examples that they do give about that they're that they claim are protecting us. Maybe I'll get into those tomorrow. But it's not worth it, man. It's not worth it. It's illegal, and it's not worth it. Don't do it. Stop giving away your freedom. If I just keep saying it, it will help. No, because nobody's listening to this. All right. Peace.